I'm Cassandra Crifasi. I am an associate professor in the Department of Health Policy and Management and co-director of the Center for Gun Violence Solutions. So my research interests really revolve around firearms, firearm policy, and violence prevention. So studying how policies work when they're in place, what happens when those laws are changed or removed, as well as what gun owners and other folks across the country think about some of these policies and solutions designed to reduce violence. So I started working in this field just about 12 years ago. So I was working on my dissertation research, training for my PhD, and was interested in occupational injuries, and in a story that's too long, there was threats to the funding that was sort of focusing on the space that I was in. And so I was able to sort of explore some complementary interests, and as I was thinking about sort of occupational safety and health in the context of violence prevention, for example, I started looking at assaults and homicides against law enforcement officers, which led me to have to look a little bit more at firearm violence specifically. And I realized that this was a unique space. At the time, there were folks working in firearm policy, firearm violence prevention, but not very many from a public health perspective, probably 24 at the most at the time. And to my knowledge, none or very few of them personally owned firearms, and that's something I've been a long time gun owner, active recreational sports shooter, and was able to bring that perspective to the work that I do, and that's sort of really what drove me to stay focused in that space. So I grew up in a home with firearms. My dad is a military veteran, and so we always had guns in the home, did some shooting and some hunting growing up. And it was just an activity that we engaged in. We did a lot of camping out in rural spaces, and so it was normal to have a firearm sort of for defense against animals and other sorts of things. And it evolved into something in college, more hunting, more sport shooting. And then when I met my husband, he was an avid shooter, and realized I'm a pretty good shot, sort of as I did more shooting, and I'm a very competitive person, and so I like to do things that I'm good at. And so that became a recreational activity that my husband and I would do together. So we'll do some competitive shooting. And yeah, it's just something that we do, hiking, video game playing, other things like that. So in undergrad, I was a pre-med biology major. I thought I wanted to be a physician, specifically an orthopedic surgeon. I played a lot of sports and got hurt a lot as a kid and a young person, and thought it was really cool that you could help people after the fact, sort of heal them and help them get better and get back to their activities. I unsuccessfully applied to medical school and was referred to a public health program, and honestly wasn't really sure what public health was at the time. It wasn't a big focus where I went to school. Really thought of public health as like food poisoning and clean water. But when I started my public health program, which I honestly thought would help me get into medical school, early in the program I heard a lecture on injury prevention and discovered that you can keep people from getting hurt in the first place. And that was like mind-blowing. That totally shifted the trajectory of my career, and since then have really been focused on preventing injuries in the first place. Yeah, so once I graduated from undergrad, I spent about 3 years working as an EMT and as a nurse's aide in a hospital, really trying to build up my experience to make me competitive for medical school. And then when I got into the public health program, I then thankfully was competitive for a doctoral program here at Hopkins and was able to go into my PhD program straight out of my master's degree. So one of the reasons I really like the space that I work in, even with as challenging as it is because we have the opportunity to make an impact right now. No offense to our lab-based colleagues who might see impacts of their work, 10, 20, even 50 years down the road. While I certainly hope to still be having an impact that far down, I like knowing that we can make a difference right now. The research questions that we're answering, translating those to policymakers who can improve their laws or put new laws in place, working with community-based organizations to help them demonstrate the impact of their program, to help them get more funding. That's something. We have a project that we're evaluating right now, and the evaluation that we did in partnership with that organization led them to be competitive for a huge grant that has fundamentally changed their program and allowed them to reach many more people. And that's the kind of impact I want to have. Can we promote safe and responsible firearm ownership and use, improve the delivery of services to meet people where they are, and really get people the kinds of supportive services and programs that they need to help them sort of have a safe and healthy life. One thing I think we could do a better job of as researchers is leaning into ways to talk about our work that maybe are not the traditional academic ways, like op-eds. And so folks may recall there was the Kansas City Super Bowl parade shooting, and as information was coming out about that and we were learning more about the number of kids that were injured and the circumstances around that event, I was sort of sad and disheartened, and I was driving into work a day or two later and I realized, not really sad, I'm kind of pissed off. And the reason I was so upset was because we know that there are things at work to reduce or prevent those kinds of violence, that kind of violent act that happened at the parade. And Missouri did literally the exact opposite of what our research shows works. They made it easier for people to buy guns. They made it easier for people to carry guns in public spaces. And then what otherwise might have just been a fist fight or maybe even a verbal altercation turned into lots of people being shot, lots of kids being shot because guns were present. And so I was able to work with our communications director to take what was a little bit of a ranty voice memo and work with him to craft it into what I think was a really compelling op-ed that was published in the Kansas City Star. So like to go for walks with my dog, play video games. I'm a big crocheter, so I love to crochet different things. That's usually what I'm doing during meetings to kind of keep my hands busy and keep my mind plugged in. I love to bake. I love cooking in general, but baking specifically. So we like to host parties and cook for people and sort of feed them in a way that makes everybody happy. You know, if I could go back and tell my sort of younger self what to expect or the kinds of things to think about, I would just say, you know, the path isn't always straight, and things that you perceive as setbacks might just be a step in a different direction to help you get to where you're going next. So one of the projects I'm most excited about is a virtual reality system where we can test sort of the common situations that gun owners might encounter when they're carrying firearms and assess performance, decision-making, interactions, those sorts of things. We hit a few bumps because of COVID-19 and had some delays, but we've now recruited 10 people into our pilot study where they participate in the scenarios and then undergo a debriefing interview. And in general, we're hearing that the system is realistic. People feel like they behave the way they would in real life. And, you know, we've got some more work to do on the pilot, but we're really excited to see how many folks that we can recruit in this and really contribute to some performance and behavior-based training to complement the kind of skills training that might already exist with concealed carry licensing. I have been really blessed to have an amazing dad. I was raised mostly by a single dad, and he's always been supportive of the direction I wanted to go. He likes to take 100% credit for where I am now because he's the reason I went and got a master's in public health. I was thinking about maybe working for another year and reapplying, but he really encouraged me to try something different, to go see what I could learn in this program, whether that was, you know, again, to help me get into medical school or to set my career on a different path. And so he always reminds me, you know, it was me who said you should go into that public health program, but now they're just thrilled. They couldn't be more proud of the work that I'm doing, you know, and the impact that work is having.